Our visibility with Microsoft sellers, which in turn helps us when we're introduced to new partners.
It has accelerated our entrance into new markets, and our product is developing with higher quality and at higher speed than it would otherwise have.
Things like ISV licensing, handling our licenses just like any Microsoft first-party applications. We see that as a big benefit.
What ISV Connect program introduced is very different level of confidence with our customer. And with the Microsoft expanding the program, we are expecting to grow our ISV portfolio significantly.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another installment of ISV Connect Live. My name is Brian Galicia. I lead our global Dynamics 365 ISV business here at Microsoft. It's an honor and pleasure to have Grad, the Chief Marketing Officer from Pros, on the call with me. And before we get to him and do intros and start the dialogue, let me do a quick orientation for those of you who've never joined, or maybe this is your first time. We truly appreciate you making the time to listen and learn about our Dynamics 365 partner ecosystem, and Pros as being such a long-standing Microsoft partner across the Microsoft Cloud. And it's going to be a really good dialogue with Grad. So a couple things. One is throughout the event, if you want to ask a question, feel free to put that in the window. But first and foremost, just to start the icebreaker, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. So maybe you're watching from somewhere on the East Coast where Grad is, or on the West Coast for me in Seattle, or anywhere in between. Feel free to type in the window, and throughout the event, we might do a quick shout out to you and then show it in the window. The other is that during the event, if there's something that resonates in the conversation that Grad and I are having, feel free to utilize one of the icons in the LinkedIn experience, because that also gives us a unique perspective just to ensure the information is resonating. So with that being said, Grad, gosh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for making time out of your busy calendar to join us.
Thank you, Brian. I can't wait to start this conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. So why don't we just start out with your role as the Chief Marketing Officer for Pros? What does that entail? And then we're going to do two questions this time, because in our pre-show, we were talking about a couple things. One is my favorite icebreaker for all our guests is, what's one thing not on your LinkedIn profile that you'd be open to sharing? And then the other is, because we're in the holiday season, we're talking about movies and kind of questions like that. I'd love to know, what is your maybe top Christmas movies that you typically watch at the start of the season, or have already watched or plan to watch before the Christmas holiday?
That's great. Yeah, I've got a short list of 65 of my favorite films prepared and ready, so we'll be able to. I think that'll take most of the time, but that's okay. It's the holiday season, right? So
that's right. That's right.
Ho ho ho, and mistletoe and all that stuff. So a bit about me. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Pros. Pros Holdings Inc. has been around since the mid 80s. They invented something called revenue management, which is the way that airlines manage the price of seats. So if you've ever looked at a seat and then come back the next day and that seat's more expensive, or you've clicked on a seat a bunch of times and it starts to go up in price, or you've noticed that the person sitting beside you is paid less than the seat that you're paid for because they bought it a different way at a different time, you're welcome. That's us. And we've, I would argue that revenue management is the reason that there are airlines flying as efficiently as they are today. It is the most important, most strategic thing airlines do. And so when we started this, it was with Southwest, and now 40% of all airline passenger traffic runs through Pros. And we've expanded into many, many other industries doing the sort of similar things, which is think about variable pricing across multiple channels, and also managing costs from multiple inputs, and there's multiple outputs. It's getting very complicated. And so to manage that, you really need software, and in our case, very advanced AI-based software. So that's what Pros does. I started here 8 months ago. I was looking for a challenge with a company that had excellent engineering, a great culture, but was perhaps not as well known as it deserved to be. And I think deserved is the right word. And that's actually, I used that word as I was going through interviews. And so that's I sort of see my mission is to make sure that the amazing work this company's done, all of it, by the way, on Azure, is sort of exposed to the rest of the world, and people understand what we can do for them. So that's a little bit of what the goal I've got. Inside pros, the team I lead is a little bit different from your sort of classic marketing team. Not radically, but we've actually not called the marketing team. Yeah, it's actually, this is actually, I was particularly proud of this. The team, as we were talking about what we wanted to do and what our goals were, they said, we're really the pipeline creation team. Marketing is essentially a tactic we're using amongst many others to drive it, but pipeline creation is really the kind of team we are. And it's a better way to sort of sit ourselves in the org. And so it's actually sticking really well. So pipeline creation team is the group of professionals that I lead. And there is, some traditional scale marketing, primarily an account-based marketing motion overall, though. The SDR, or the sort of sales development representative team, also reports into me, as well as all the partner team. So essentially all the teams that work on creating partnerships and leads and everything else all report into me. And it's great to have that kind of cohesive group all driving towards one goal, which is fantastic.
I love it. I probably need to start calling you Chief Pipeline Creation Officer.
Well, yes, that is actually what I am. I really should be called that, but it looks super duper weird on LinkedIn. So
super long.
And there's probably something else about changing that. They won't be able to do salary comps for me and all that kind of stuff anymore. But yeah, maybe one day, right? Like I do actually think it's not an insane idea that starts to emerge, just like Chief Digital Officer emerged about sort of half a dozen years ago. And there's like all these two new kinds of titles do emerge over time. And inside B2B SaaS companies, pipeline, is the thing. And you can't ask your sellers to drive it because it affects seller efficiency, right? So you've got two levers with sellers. You've got productivity and you've got capacity. And if you have your sellers building pipeline, their productivity is affected. So you've really got to get that into a team who can drive it. So we'll see what happens.
I love it, Grad. So maybe the two quick questions that you can answer just for people to continue to get to know you on the call is one, what's one thing on your LinkedIn profile? And then the second, what's your top Christmas movie? We already got someone in the LinkedIn chat putting something, so thanks, Peter, and I'll flash that up there. But
okay, great.
maybe we can start with those first two questions.
Well, there's no section. I think this is a big mistake on LinkedIn. There's no section on LinkedIn for pets, right? And I have a absolutely amazing dog. It's actually my fiance's dog. So if she on off chance was listening to this, it's highly unlikely she is, but if she was listening to this, she would be horrified to hear me say my dog, but it's like my dog. But Hester Prynne is our dog, and she's just an extraordinary rescue. Rachel rescued her from a kill shelter, and she's a kind of half lab, half terrier mutt, but just the greatest thing. And I don't know why LinkedIn doesn't let you like put your pets in and all that kind of more personal information. I think it would humanize people a lot. So that's like one thing that's not on my LinkedIn profile, but I think it should be. Yeah, and then Christmas movies, it's so easy for me, and I'm a Christmas fanatic. Like Rachel calls us Christmas crackheads, and we're about to get married. We're getting married at the TWA Hotel here in New York City on Saturday. This Saturday, and we're kind of loosely characterizing it as a cocktail party because it's kind of all kind of casual cocktail, not casual, it's a black tie, but kind of cocktail style, not sit down. So cocktail style with caviar and champagne. It'll be super fun. And then we're gonna have briefly interrupt the cocktail party with a Jewish wedding ceremony. And then we've dropped a bucket of Christmas on the whole place. So it's going to be very eclectic and very, very, very unusual, but it's going to be super fun. And Christmas is just our favorite time of year. And we love the idea of having a Christmas wedding. And so my favorite special is Charlie Brown's Christmas. In fact, I could just stop there. Right. I could just watch that a bunch of times and be good. And I always start the season by watching Charlie Brown Christmas.
I love it.
I never start with anything else, and I always end the season watching Charlie Brown Christmas. So it bookends my Christmas season viewing. And then I'm a real Grinch lover. In fact, our wedding cake is a Grinch cake.
It's a green.
it's green. It's a giant version of Whoville. It's like a 4-story Whoville, and it's going to be a Grinch cake. And so, and we're gonna be playing like "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch" while we cut it. Like, so we're like all on theme here. So Grinch, and I've already actually seen Charlie Brown and Grinch so far this season, so I get in there pretty quickly. And then a more modern one that I think one of the most endearing films made in a long time is Elf. I just love Elf so much, and I can't watch that enough. And then I'll usually round it out with the good old fashioned Rudolph. Can't get enough of that. And then one that's not as well known, but it's got Fred Astaire in it, and it's called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Absolutely love that. Same Rankin Bass animation as Rudolph. So that if that's the only ones I can watch, I definitely make sure I nail those. But in fact, literally, I'll probably watch I don't know, hundreds of hours of Christmas specials over the next month, and all the Hallmark movies. Like, there's going to be a bunch of Christmas going through these eyeballs. But those 5 are my favorites.
I love it, Grad. And well, congratulations first off to you and your
Thank you.
spouse in your upcoming wedding. And I'm a dog lover myself. I have a golden retriever, but a couple things. Let me do a quick shout out. A couple people. Peter, thanks for watching from New Jersey. Santosh from Raleigh. So if we continue, as people are potentially watching or replay, love to have it. And then of course, Peter denoted, I mean, this is a classic. I don't think anyone would argue about the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's a very common.
You're right. Actually, I that's on the list. That's on the list. I see that every year too.
That's right.
You did say 5, but yeah, I definitely would. That's hey Russ, want to help me fix these bulbs? Sure, Dad. First, I got some stuff to do in the morning. Got to milk cows.
I love it. Yes, I mean you could. There's so many famous lines in there, especially when they put up a Christmas tree. Oh, a lot of sap. Anyway, I think we could go on and on and on, but let's get to with the 20 minutes we have left. Let's get to the meat of the conversation and talk about the journey. I mean, because when you say profit optimization, and you kind of tease it out in your intro, Grad, is really talk about the journey that Pros has had to transform to this topic of profit optimization. And what does that really mean to potential end customers, buyers, not just in the travel industry, which is great that Pros has had that history for so long, but you're doing that across other industries now as well. So maybe you could talk about that journey, because that will help seed for people watching live or the replay, the use case scenarios that you really help to elevate in business outcomes.
Yeah, and I think the history lesson is actually useful because, with stuff that's around optimization, it can sometimes get a bit esoteric. And there are some pretty interesting optimization platforms coming out now, and it's sort of, a lot of people talk about outcome optimization and things like that, and it's a little bit hard to land it, like, just mentally. What does that really mean, or what's the use case? But we did start with pricing, and we did start with airlines, but that was a million years ago. Since then, we're very large in industrial manufacturing, huge in industrial distribution. We have a very big presence in the oil and gas industry. We have a new case from ExxonMobil that we're allowed to publish. I'll talk about that a little bit. We've got incredible amount of presence in the chemical industry. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff in healthcare, which has been very, very, very interesting. And essentially, the way to think about it is when you're in a business where you have a lot of reasonably significant number of complex inputs, there's some sort of processing or movement in the middle of it. This is where the distribution example comes in. And then there's a whole bunch of outputs. That managing that, particularly in the modern world, has become quite complicated. And so what we would sort of typically, the way we would started was we'd started in the pricing area, because you would have, in some cases, people would have thousands of products. If you're a distributor, there's one distributor we have who has 23 million SKUs. 23 million SKUs. They got to the millionth row of Excel and got whatever message is waiting for you when you get there that said Excel can't go past 1 million rows, which actually, when you think about it, it's pretty damn amazing. But still, I mean, they're exceeding the limits of Excel, and they got to a point where, how do we actually reprice 23 million items? And then in a time when there was zero inflation or slight deflation, people could kind of sort of spin those plates okay. But what was happening is that all this new complexity was being added as new channels were being added. And what we also know is that different kinds of customers can bear different kinds of prices. Right. So you actually, and depending on the kind of customer it is, you can actually vary the price. And so there's variability by customer. Say they've got 50,000 customers, variability by channel. Say there's, a dozen channels, and variability by product. The 23 million products times all those other factors, you're talking about billions and billions of potential number of pricing points. You can't really do that as a human, obviously, or even with a spreadsheet. And so that's where we started coming in, started applying a lot of advanced AI. Because we handle so many transactions today, this is a staggering number, but pros will process this year more than 3 trillion transactions. We're one of the largest compute customers on the Azure platform. And 3 trillion, just to kind of dimensionalize that number, that's more than all the stars in our galaxy.
Oh, geez.
Okay. It's 10 times the number of galaxies in the universe. Okay. Another one. And of course, it eclipses MasterCard's transaction volume or Visa's transaction volume, or even the two of them combined. It's more than all the tweets that come out on Twitter. It was a really big number. I mean, we did a little bit of research and we found that, in fact, it's even more, and this may be hard to believe, but it's 3 trillion is even more than all of the cat videos on TikTok. So we're not kidding around here. And so that's and so I think that we use that, and that huge transaction volume allows our AI, which has got some very advanced science. We have 40 data scientists who are PhDs and doctors who basically are working on this full time. We've got 500 engineers who focus on this all the time. And so we've got built a very advanced system. Now, what's also happened, though, is that the cost inputs are also changing. And so people were managing pricing, but then the cost was changing as well. And so some of our more advanced customers started using us to also manage the cost piece. And again, this industrial distributor is an example. One of the things that they sell is copper wire. Well, copper wire is a commodity based on the price of copper. And as the copper commodity price fluctuated, which has actually been fluctuating quite a bit this last year because of conflict, they needed to change the price of the wire. And so you really need to have both sides of that margin equation, both cost and price, to truly manage it. And what this particular company said is that for the first time in their history, during inflationary times, they managed to increase margins and keep growing. And they'd never been able to do that before. Because classically, what would happen is as inflation hit, they wouldn't be able to respond quickly enough, and their margins would start to shrink. And so that's just a good example of how we've added a ton of value across multiple ecosystems. I'll talk a little bit about our ROI study in a second. And so I think that what we found is, as we talk to customers, and we've done this sort of slight shift in our positioning over the last 6 months, is that when we talk to CFOs in particular at our customers, and the CFOs would say, hey, you're my best kept secret. You're the thing that helps me manage margin, because I can manage both sides of the equation. And so we've kind of sort of framed that up as the CFO's best kept secret for profitable growth. And then the category of software that we're in is profit optimization software, which is also the acronym. That's our name: PR for profit, O for optimization, and S for software. And I think this idea of profit optimization software is a newish idea, but it's an old idea too. It's a new idea in that no one's ever talked about it before. It's a brand new category. No one's ever had the computing go-to to be able to do it before, and no one's had the sort of customer base to do it before. So we're kind of there early. But it's also an old idea in that, who doesn't think profit's important? I mean, we go sometimes through little periods in the stock market where it gets a little weird, but generally speaking, go back in his business history at any point in time and say, hey, how would you like to have more profits? Most people are like, okay with that. There's this amazing stat: 90% of annual reports cite gross margin improvement as an area of focus. So everyone cares about it. So I like where we are. I like that we're in a spot where people care, and we're in a category where people were like, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know that kind of tech existed. So it's exciting.
I love it, Grad. Gosh, what a great summary. And for those either watching live or listening to the replay, we're all thinking about it, especially in these times right now. And you've seen, maybe for those listening, you've seen some of the headway we are at Microsoft doing, which is do more with less.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
that scenario of what you just described, Grad, is a nice coming in the middle, because like, who doesn't want to optimize things they already have and make more margin off those scenarios, especially with everything going on? Like, if you can't have more selling opportunities, but you can maximize that revenue opportunity for the opportunities you do have, what would that mean? And I'm sure if we went through all the 10Ks, public 10Ks in that are going to happen or have happened, we're going to see something in there regarding how do I optimize profit. I'm pretty confident we'd probably see that. So,
well, and you've touched on a nuance that's super important, which is when you're using tools to optimize your cost management and your price management internally, what you're doing is you're driving organic margin and organic growth from your existing operations. Companies can always, buy other companies, do M&A, and we're probably about to enter a period as the IPO market sort of declines. We're probably entering a period of high M&A activity. It's kind of classically how the tech market sort of goes, right? M&A, then IPO, then M&A, then IPO. And what we'll see is companies will be trying to grow through M&A. But organic growth is very powerful. If you can drive organic growth, it's a strong sign of health of your core business. And that's looked on very favorably by the stock market. So I haven't kind of gone here yet, but you could argue that well implemented, a strong, profitable growth strategy using profit optimization software is actually also the best way to improve your stock price. And we'll sort of have some examples of that as well. So that's kind of, and that this idea of organic growth, I think, is what you were touching on a second ago, is really powerful.
I love it, Grad. So it's amazing like how quickly these conversations go, because I'm looking at the clock, guys. Wow, we only have about 7 minutes left. So there are a few more questions, and maybe we can focus on two questions and do follow-up. So one being, gosh, you've been part of the Microsoft ecosystem, not only just because you used to work at Microsoft, but you also have worked in the partner channel at some other ISVs. So maybe you can talk about a little bit about what's that journey been like, especially now that you've been at Pros, working with the Microsoft ecosystem. And then we'll get to the second to last question, which is one of my favorites, which is talking about customer scenarios. So why don't we start with, like, what's the partner journey that you've experienced and been on?
Well, it's very interesting. And, I worked at Microsoft for 12 years. I loved the company, still do. I don't have a bad thing to say. I think it's the best experience that ever happened to me, and it's the greatest company in the world. It may be the greatest company ever created. Very few companies have managed to transition across 3 completely new tech trends to go from OSs to productivity software and now to the cloud. It's unprecedented. It's actually kind of amazing. And so I'm very, very proud to be an alumni of Microsoft. It is interesting living on the other side of it. There's a positive, and there's no negatives, but there's a positive, and there's kind of like this is a lot more harder than it seemed. So I actually built a lot of partner infrastructure when I was CMO for Microsoft US. We built the partner investment engine. We built a lot of the centralized partner management tools. And what I see that's interesting on the other side is there is a lot of complexity that Microsoft presents with. Now we're very fortunate because we have someone named Peter Martin who works with us and helps us kind of manage that complexity. But the company still has a more complex external view than it seemed when I was on the inside. Like on the inside, I think, how hard is this? It's really good. Go here, no big deal. It's a lot more difficult to understand it on the outside. And I think partly it's that the company keeps changing, and so things get relabeled or renamed, and that's hard for partners. It makes it very difficult. And then there are a number of different groups, and there's a couple of different marketplaces, and those little bits of complexity make it more difficult. The flip side is that to be able to leverage the momentum of Microsoft. It's very exciting, right? To have someone like Peter who will help us navigate all that stuff and help us get stuff done. Very, very, very cool. It's very, very powerful. And so, for us, Microsoft is our most important partner relationship and the one we focus on and work on every single day. There's one little funny thing that I'll tell you, just from being an employee to being on the outside, and this is something happened to me reasonably quickly. There was two experiences, actually. One was I went originally from Microsoft to a company that was using Google. So it had the Google productivity platform.
Yep.
And I remember when I was at Microsoft, Kevin Turner was COO for quite a long time. And Kevin had a rule that if you lost a Office deal to Google Docs, I guess, or whatever it's called, if you lost an Office deal to Google Docs as a salesperson, you were instantly fired. Like instantaneously fired, no questions asked. You were just fired. It didn't matter how good a person you were. It didn't matter if you lost a deal, you were fired, which seemed very draconian to me at the time. And to quite a few other people. I wasn't the only person that thought that sounded a bit draconian. Then I actually started using the Google Productivity Suite. It is total rubbish. Like I am so on Kevin Turner's side now. Like I am like anyone who loses a deal to this creaking old jalopy of broken parts should get fired. I totally get it now. I'm 100% behind Kevin now. So that was one thing. The second thing is when I started at Pros is fully on the Microsoft stack and on Teams. And it was just so great to be back, to come home. Like to come home was just so great. Like I actually had tears in my eyes. I'm on a Surface Studio right now. I'm all back in, and it's just so good to be home. But what's fascinating is that, like when you're using Microsoft software inside Microsoft, you're using like the beta or even alpha versions of it. So, it's kind of a little bit, buggy, and there's things, sending bug reports, and you're kind of, fixing the software to make it better for the people that it gets released to. When you're on the other side of that, it's actually amazing to use this stuff because it never crashes. It never breaks. Like it is rock solid, and it's a different experience using it, but it's just like, I'm kind of starting to use now the stuff I was using when I was in the company 4 years ago. So it's like you're sort of shifted in time, but with something that's more sort of reliable. It's kind of a funny experience, but very cool.
Yeah, no, Grad, it is interesting, is like that balance of when you're an employee inside the company and then you have been using it, but then you start to use it from an outsider perspective, and all the things you just said is just,
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a great perspective, and it really proves out, dude, to your point. It's like, wow, I not just I would employ, but like this stuff actually provides value, productivity, not just in what you do, but the partnerships and all that. Well, I appreciate those kind words, because yes, I mean, I think Pros is an amazing partner of ours, longstanding, and taking advantage of the Microsoft Cloud to drive benefit for both organizations. And the biggest benefit is driving it to end customers. So with about 2 minutes left, maybe you can spend about a minute talking about your favorite customer story, and then we can do about a minute wrap up, because we do have a video that you shared with me that we'll run at the end, which provides a really good summary and focus in a fun way as well, that Grad shared. But maybe we can start with what's your kind of quick customer story, and then we'll talk about kind of key steps and wrap up for people.
Yeah, really quickly. I started my career at Microsoft in healthcare. I was in the healthcare solutions group in the in Microsoft Research, and so I'll use a healthcare example because we've got many industries that we operate in, but this is a good one because it's a good example of kind of generically how we can help companies succeed. So Spire Healthcare is a healthcare provider in the UK, and they had a whole bunch of different procedures, and each procedure carried with it different kinds of devices that you'd have to wear, and bandages and procedures and things, and things you had to, prescriptions, like just a lot of stuff associated with it. And they were doing it manually, and they had about 5,000 different people doing these things, and they were getting it done, but it was really hard. It was a big load on the company, and to a certain extent challenging for patients because it could take some time. So they switched to Pros. We implemented with them, and in the first year they've increased their revenue by 100 million pounds.
Wow.
And increased that patient satisfaction, because patients get the bill quick. It's one bill, they know it, they understand it, and they also know to pay it. Sometimes when you get 3 or 4 bills, you don't know which one to pay. And so collections are better, revenue's better, customers are happier. And it's just a great example of, that's healthcare, but it's because there's a lot of inputs, there's a lot of outputs, there's a lot of complexity. And when you see yourself in a situation where there's a lot of manual intervention, where people are running around with Post-it notes and phone calls and sending emails to each other, there's a place for pros to help make that better.
I love it. And what an amazing story too, because the journey you mentioned is like, it has nothing to do with travel. That is a scenario that is such an amazing use case, because you think about any industry, the things that you can do for profit optimization is very powerful as it relates to what you do, and pair that to a business application scenario with Dynamics. Even better, because it's part of the business process fundamentals that end up having to drive in the business process. So let's do a wrap up, Grad. When you think about what if someone's listening, either Microsoft, a partner, or a potential buyer, someone's like, oh, this is super interesting what Grad said. What would you recommend people do next? Of course, we're on LinkedIn, so feel free for anyone watching to reach out to Grad. He's very responsive, just like I am on LinkedIn. But what are some of the things you'd like to kind of say as kind of next steps for people who may be interested in pros?
Well, of course, just to double click on what you said, please hit me on LinkedIn anytime. I do read my mail all the time. But go to pros.com. There is a button in the top right to talk to a seller, so we can connect you that way. As well, there's some interesting videos to show you pros in action, and links to book Profit Workshop, and we can come and sit down with you, work through your details, and help you understand what potential you have locked up in your organization right now.
Yeah, that's such a great value, Grad, when you mentioned that pros workshop, that to really have a conversation so that people can understand before you go too deep. It's like, what would this really mean? And I love how pros really drives that, because that's such a valuable, tangible conversation to get started. I also put in the flash up in here if people want to take a screenshot and come to it later. That is the listing for pros on the App Source, on Microsoft App Source. Really goes into many of the things that Grad said, but also is in a centralized place that goes directly to what pros is listed in our marketplace. So with that being said, Grad, gosh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
Is there anything you'd like to say as a kind of a final closing words before we actually get to the video?
Well, no, I wanted to thank you, and I want to wish you happy holidays. And I hope that for everyone out there, this has been an interesting and challenging year in many ways. And so hope everyone's able to enjoy the holiday season and spend time with their loved ones and appreciate family and everything else that means.
I love it, Grad. I'm super grateful for the partnership. Thank you so much for making time. I wish you all the best with your pending wedding this coming weekend. What an amazing time to get married, but also get married during the holidays. I mean, it's a very special moment.
It is.
So I wish you all the best.
Just hope the bride says I do. My fingers crossed.
No wedding crashers, no person saying stop the wedding. But anyway, thank you so much, Grad. I appreciate it. Thank you, Pros team, for the amazing partnership, and for everyone watching. Thanks for making the time. This is another installment of ISV Connect Live. We do these every Monday at 8 o'clock, so we'll have another one next week. So thanks again, Grad and Pros, and enjoy, for people watching, enjoy this video. Thanks.
So what is profit optimization software?
We'll never talk.
Whatever you do, don't tell them about our AI-driven pricing capabilities.
They got CPQ plus AI-powered pricing.
You mean price and cost?
You were not supposed to tell them that our software also helps companies optimize both price and cost.
That's what's allowing the CFO to control both sides of the margin equation.
Congratulations, pros. You just upgraded to a company of interest.